Hey crafty friends, today we are going to sew this fun butterfly finger puppet. So this doesn't have to be a finger puppet, but there are a few steps if you want to make one. This is a great beginner project for kids who have never sewn anything before and want an easy hand sewing project, or adults who just want a fun thing to do. I have a free pattern on my website and there is a link to it in the description below. So go ahead, click that link, print your pattern, come back here and we will sew this together. To sew this felt butterfly plushie, you're going to need the following supplies. Felt in the colors that you want your butterfly. I have one color for the body and one color for the wing. You can do other colors if you want. Something to trace your pattern with, something to cut your pattern out with. You are going to need kind of sharper scissors. Kids' scissors don't work great for felt. Something to sew your pattern with. This is embroidery floss. It's just thicker thread. You can use normal thread too, but any of the parts where I'm using a single strand of thread, you will want to double up if you are using a single strand of thread. Something to stuff your plushie with. This is polyfill. It's found at craft stores. It's what's in most stuffed animals. You can use this to stuff your felt plushie. You can also use felt scraps. So these are the little bits of extra that I get after tracing off my pattern. They work great. This is a great way to reuse them, is to stuff them into your felt plushie. I've used cotton balls, I've used turned up plastic bags, so use what you have. A needle to sew your pattern with. This again is an embroidery needle. It just has a little bit of a thicker eye here for this thicker thread. And finally, a pattern. Again, on my website, I have this pattern as a free printable. There's a link in the description below, so go ahead, click that link, print your pattern, cut it out, and come back here. Once you have your pattern pieces cut out, we get to start tracing. Now, as you're getting ready to trace, don't just put your pattern piece right in the middle of your felt. You're gonna wanna put it as close to the side as you can. This will just maximize your felt so you can use it for more projects in the future. And all of these that say cut to, you're gonna trace them one time on the side with words, and then you're gonna flip it over, and the second time you trace it, you're gonna trace it on the blank side. This one you only need if you want to make your butterfly into a finger puppet. If you just want it to be a plushie, you could ignore this piece, don't trace it, and don't do the steps to sew it in. So go ahead, pause the video, and get your pieces traced. Did you know that butterflies can taste food through their feet? This helps them know if a plant's going to be a good one to lay their eggs on. They're also incredible pollinators and really helpful for helping food and crops grow. Once you have all of your pieces traced, it's time to start cutting them out. As you're cutting, you are going to need some bigger scissors. Kid scissors don't work great for this, and you're going to want to aim for cutting right here, kind of in the middle of your scissors. And we're going to do our best to cut off our tracing line. I'm cutting just a little bit inside of it, cutting it off. And again, all these little bits on the side, hang on to those because they work great for reusing as filler to stuff our plushie with. Pause the video, get all of your pieces cut out, and we will come back here and start piecing this together. Did you know some butterflies, like the monarch butterfly, migrate thousands of miles each year to find warmer climates? Once we have our pattern all cut out, it's time to start sewing. So grab your embroidery floss or your thread, and I usually measure from about my fingertips to my shoulder. I find that's a length that is not overwhelming for me to sew with. I usually lick the end of my thread and smoosh it as flat as I can to put it through the needle. And we are going to tie one end of the string. So we're not going to tie them both together. We're just going to do one end, and we're going to do a loop knot. So you're going to do it in a circle, grab the tail, toss it under, and then I put my fingers across where this knot is so that it holds it in place, and then I'm going to pull the side of the string that has my needle on it, and this is going to give me a nice knot right here at the end. Now I've got my butterfly pieces laid out, so I've got the wings in the middle, I've got the top body on top, and because I'm making a finger puppet, I also have this. I'm going to flip my butterfly over, whoop, and this is going to go on the bottom. And I'm going to sew one side of it while I'm going through, and then I'm going to push it together as I'm sewing the other side as we're sewing. And then the final thing is that you want to look at your pattern pieces and see if you have any parts that still show your tracing lines, and you just want to point those inward. So I'm going to make sure that this side is going to go on the inside of my butterfly. The same with this. Put his wings, the wings on again. I want mine down just a little bit so I can see the neck of my butterfly. Trying to get them even, grab that and just align it on the side. We are going to start with going through both pieces of felt. You're going to pull your needle almost to the very end of this string. We're just leaving a little tail right here. And then you're going to poke your needle into this bundle of strings right here. If you are sewing with a single thread, you will want to fold it in half instead of a single strand right here, and then you'll put it through the middle of the two. And now I'm just going to pull it tight. And I'm going to grab this tail that's hanging off, and I'm just going to push it onto the inside of my plushie. Now, for a few stitches, we are going to do what's called a blanket stitch. So a blanket stitch, I've got mine down on the table right now. And for a blanket stitch, you're always going to go from the same direction. So every time I put my needles through the fabric, it's going to be from the side of my fabric that is by the table. So I'm never going to go from top down. I'm always going to go from bottom up. So I'm going to go through both pieces of fabric. I'm going to grab this tail end and I'm going to put it over the top of my needle. And then I'm going to pull it all the way to the end. And then I'm going to move up a little bit. And I'm going to go from the same side, my needles towards the table, sticking my needle in, pulling it over the top of my needle, pulling it all the way up. Scooching up a little more. Again, my needle is from the side by the table, going through both pieces of felt, putting my needle halfway through. I'm not pulling my needle all the way out, putting my thread over the top, pulling it all the way through. So this gives a blanket stitch, so it just gives you these little stitches down here, these little stitches down there, and then one across. So I guess it's a modified blanket stitch. We're going to keep going with that blanket stitch until we get to this place where we're going to start attaching that wing. So I'm also going to keep my finger puppet piece on here. So I'm going to keep going with this blanket stitch until I get almost to the top of the tail right there. So I'm going to take my other pieces off because they're a little difficult for me to work with, and I'm just going to keep going with that blanket stitch. So from the side by the table, knot over the top and pull it through. All right, now I'm going to pause right here. I'm going to put that wing back in. Enough, I need it to overlap the pink inside felt so that it gets sewn in. And then I'm going to put my finger puppet piece right here at the edge too. So I have a felt sandwich with 3 pieces. And instead of doing a blanket stitch now, we are going to do what's called a running stitch. This one, you're going to go from the side with the table, pull your stitch all the way to the end. You're going to have to make sure it doesn't get caught on anything. And now we're going to go from the sky side or from the top down, back through all 3 pieces of felt. And pull. You're going to have to make sure that your string isn't getting looped over the bottom, but we're going to pull that all the way. Then we're going to go from the table side, back up through all 3 pieces of felt. So we're just going in and out. This is called a running stitch. And we're going to do that the whole length of this wing. Going from the top side down. Whoop, I got caught. Just pause, get your thread free, and get back to it. Did you know that butterfly wings are covered in tiny scales that reflect the light, and that helps create their vibrant colors? Just like that, we have our wing attached. We're just going to leave the bottom of this finger puppet. And now we're going to go back to that blanket stitch around the head. So for this, I'm just realigning my felt. The most important is that the edges match up. So again, we're going to go from the table side. We're going to go through both pieces of felt, pause with our needle halfway through, grab the tail and put it over the top of the needle, and then we're going to pull it out. Making sure the edges of my felt are aligned, putting my needle halfway through, tail over the top and pulling it through. We're going to keep doing that around the whole head of our butterfly. All right, so we have half of our butterfly done. So because this is a really thin plushie, this is a good part to pause and stuff your head a little bit because it's going to be trickier to reach this as we continue sewing along the body. So I'm just taking some tiny bits of my scrap felt. I'm probably gonna need even smaller because this head is quite small. Pushing it in and just nudging that up into the head. You can use the back of your scissors or a pencil to try and help you reach if it feels too tight for your fingers. And if your pieces, like I keep grabbing too big of a pieces, you're gonna need pretty small pieces. All right, once we have our head done, I'm going to pull that last stitch tight again. And now we're going to attach our other butterfly wing. So I am going to set it in here. Try and kind of match it up with my other. And then I'm going to flip this over because again, I am doing the finger puppet piece, which is just a little trickier. And on this side, I am going to grab the finger puppet piece and I'm just going to bend it so the edges line up. And it's okay, I'm just bending it really far to this side right now so it's out of the way. It will make sense when I put my finger in it later. For now, I just need it out of the way. Then we're gonna go back to that running stitch. So we're gonna go from the top down, pull your stitch all the way through, and then we're gonna go from the bottom up. If you are doing the finger puppet piece, again, you just wanna keep the edge of it, right at the edge of this butterfly body. You might have to move it with each stitch as things just get jostled around a little bit. All right, right here on the finger puppet, I'm not going to keep sewing the finger puppet felt. I'm going to go just through the body pieces and the wing for this last little bit. I have more space for my finger because my finger is not so skinny that I could fit it through this part of the butterfly's body. I need to go in this wider spot. So I'm pausing this felt when I've got a little bit more space. I'm going to keep going my bottom down, top up, and try just to get the body pieces and the wing. And once we have our wing sewn all the way in, we're going to pause again, and we are going to stuff the body of our butterfly before we go and finish sewing the tail. You're going to try and stuff the furthest away things first. So I'm going to try and push this bit in all the way up to the top. And we are through the hardest parts of it. Now we're just going to continue with that blanket stitch all the way to the end of our project. So again, the blanket stitch, we're always going from the table side up, grab the tail, put it over the top, and pull it through. Table side up, over the top, pull it through. When you get halfway in your tail right here, if you want to add more stuffing to the tail, this is a good point to do it. Going with my blanket stitch, and I'll probably add a little more when I get right around the bottom of this. This is the last possible moment I can add stuffing. We need some small pieces just to get it in the very tip of the tail right here. Finish going around it with our blanket stitch, trying to get just the edges of your felt and not your stuffing. Just a little tricky. You're probably gonna have to go slower at this point. And I'm right back here to where I started. I'm doing one more stitch, but this time when I'm putting my needle halfway through, instead of wrapping the thread around it once, I'm going to do it 2 times, 1, 2, and then I'm going to pull my thread back towards the eye of this needle, and I'm going to put my thumb and finger over the top of the needle. I'm pinching it pretty good as I'm sliding my needle out. This is going to keep your thread in place. Keep that knot right there at the end of the tail, and then I usually stick my needle into my plushie and carefully wiggle it out the other side. I want to make sure I'm not going to get my fingers with it. Pull the thread all the way through, and then over here is where I snip my thread off. Now, and here we are with our finished felt butterfly. I did mine as a finger puppet, so you can see I've got a little space to fit my finger in right here, and it's got some wonderful, gentle flapping motions. If you like this, or you're interested in more easy sew, beginner-friendly tutorials, be sure to come back next week. I have a brand new pattern and tutorial posted every Monday. And if you enjoyed this and had a good time, please be sure to like, share, follow along, all the things, and I will see you next week.